welcome to today's video. And in today's video, I will be discussing the 3 most likely flips for every party come the 2024 election. Now, I don't necessarily know that there will be any flips. In my current projection, I've not been updating my 2024 projections, although that might be a good idea. So if you guys want me to do that, I might start doing that. But I don't necessarily know that there will be any flips in my current prediction, I guess. I don't know. There are a few states which are going to be very competitive, and I don't know if they would be flips. There are 2 states that, they are one is a Democratic state, or one's a state that voted for Biden, one's a state that voted for Trump, and they are probably the 2 most likely flips, for each party. But, there are a lot of states that aren't very likely to flip that will be on here, because some of the time with this, most likely means the least unlikely. So it'll be, a lot of these states won't be very likely, but they're going to be the least unlikely. So we're going to start off with the most likely Democratic flip. A lot of you guys probably guessed this. This is North Carolina. Actually, this is the wrong map. I just realized that. So I'm going to go to this map. Okay, I'm going to go close that. So I don't have a actually, I can just go make it Democratic. That's not how you spell Democratic. Flip. And then Republican flip. So the first state is North Carolina, and I'll talk about that for a minute. If we go over here, and I'm assuming, yeah, okay, this is the 2020 presidential election map. If we go look at North Carolina, Trump very narrowly won it. He won it by 1.3%. Now, Biden, we all do know, is a strong candidate for rural areas. But the Republicans have done fairly well among the suburbs. I'm actually gonna pause this real quick because I'm gonna go get some exit polls up, and I don't know if I have an exit poll tab open. I'm gonna go see if that's an exit poll tab. As a matter of fact, it was an exit poll tab. But I'm going to go to North Carolina and not income. That's gonna stay there. I'm gonna go to North Carolina, and we're gonna go look at area type. That's not, there's no O in type. Right now, North Carolina suburbs are still very, very red. Now, we do know that, these suburbs, that America's suburbs have been shifting to the left. And Trump was only able to win. He barely won. He won it by 1.3%, less than 100,000 votes. He was only able to win by that much, even though he was still carrying the suburbs at 21%. And as the suburbs continue to shift to the left, it'll shift the entire state, and Democrats are looking very likely to flip it. I'm remaining skeptical, but there's a very good chance that it does flip. Now, the next state is a flip for the Republicans. That's the state of Wisconsin. Now, if we go over here, Biden won Wisconsin, yes. But he didn't win it by a lot. He won it by 0.6, I believe, is what it was. And he won it by a smaller margin than Trump. Trump won it by, I believe, 0.8. So he actually did worse in Wisconsin than Trump did in 2016. Now, if we go to the exit polls again, and we go look at Wisconsin, I believe that their suburbs are, also still red. So that is one reason why I am also remaining skeptical about Wisconsin flipping, because their suburbs are still pretty red, and they're going to continue to shift to the left. Trump lost, even though he won them by 12%. So that's why I'm skeptical. However, like I said, Biden did win it by a smaller margin than Trump, and this could be a flip, and could actually be more likely to flip than not. Should the GOP, or should the Democrats run Kamala Harris, and should the GOP run Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley? And by the way, Nikki Haley, just said, just kind of attacked Trump, in an interview recently, which is very interesting. I was considering making a video about it. Though there's not a whole lot for me to cover in the video, I guess. But, if the GOP were to run a strong candidate for the Rust Belt, Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis, maybe Don Jr., I don't know if he would be a strong candidate for the suburbs, for the Rust Belt. Maybe Ivanka Trump, she might be a strong candidate for the Rust Belt. Some of those candidates, and the Democrats, if they were to run Kamala Harris, we could see Republicans, winning in Wisconsin by over 1%, because these are strong Republicans for the Rust Belt. The only question is whether or not Harris will be such a bad suburban candidate and such a bad candidate when it comes to appealing to the white working class. If she can spend the next 4 years portraying herself as a populist candidate, she can actually do very well there. But I think right now, there's a very good chance that Wisconsin ends up flipping. Now, the next state for the Democrats, and this will come as a bit of a surprise. I don't think it's gonna flip. I think it's highly unlikely that it does, but it's the state of Florida. Now, the case for Florida is that if we go look at Florida, there are two main, not counties, four counties, but two main points two main areas that I'm gonna make points on. So these three counties I want to go look at real quick. Three of probably the most competitive counties in the state: Pinellas County, Seminole County, and Duval County. Now they're all, for the most part, suburban counties. Pinellas County, down in the south of Pinellas County, is St. Petersburg, but up here, a lot of this is Tampa suburbs. It's a suburban county for the most part. Seminole County, another suburban county. It's north of Orlando. A lot of Orlando suburbs up in Seminole County. In Jacksonville, this is less suburban. I mean, it is suburban, but it also holds Jacksonville, so it's also pretty urban. These counties all flipped from 2016. I don't have the numbers over here, but Biden won Pinellas County very narrowly. As you can see, he won it by 0.3%. I think Trump actually won it by 1.1% back in 2016. I'll actually go pull up a 2016 map. Yes. So, right here in Pinellas County, Trump won it by 1.1%. Biden flipped it. We go look over here at Seminole County. Trump won it. Biden flipped it. And we go look at Duval County. Trump won it. Biden flipped it. Now, these areas, I believe, flipped at one point on the gubernatorial level. I don't know if Gillum won all these counties. I'm pretty certain that he won Pinellas and either Duval or Seminole, if not both counties. But the point is that these are fairly suburban counties, and if the Democrats can continue to do well there, as these suburbs are continuing to shift to the left, which they will, and as they continue to do better there, they're looking fairly strong in the state. But the next thing that they would have to do is do very, very well in Miami-Dade County. Joe Biden did awfully there. The Democrats would have to run a moderate, or not even a moderate, but a candidate who's not too far to the left. If AOC were to run, even if she were to do well when it came to defending herself and that she's not a socialist, she would still probably do pretty bad in the county. They would have to run somebody no farther to the left than Kamala Harris, with minority appeal, and that's able to deflect attacks of socialism. I think that Kamala Harris would be a strong candidate for this area, but she would have to campaign here a lot. She would have to be able to return back to his 30% margin of victories, and I don't necessarily know that that's very likely. But looking at this Trump map, Trump lost almost every swing state, and I think that North Carolina was a no-brainer, but a lot of these states will be very difficult for Democrats to flip. I think that Florida at this point is probably the second most likely, or I guess, other than North Carolina, because I think North Carolina is actually not like the least unlikely, probably more like the most likely, which I know are the same thing. It's just logic, I guess. But Florida is probably the second least unlikely state to flip. Now for the next Republican flip, and this is where it started getting kind of difficult. But I was able to decide after a bit. The state of Pennsylvania. Now, this state could actually still be a fairly Democratic state, and I'll make that argument really quickly. Because I'll probably be making this argument if I ever look at the presidential map again, and I don't want to just gloss over it. To help prove my point, if we go back to area type, the suburbs are still red here. They're not terribly red. They're only 3% red, but the suburbs were still red. So and Biden was able to do very well here. If he's able to, or I guess that the Democrats are able to continue to shift the suburbs to the left, even if they don't do as well among the white working class, their suburban victories will probably be able to make up for it. They'll probably be winning by similar margins. However, if the Democrats don't do as well in the suburbs, or if they don't shift them as much as expected, and they don't do amazing in the suburbs, it's expected that the GOP, the GOP does very well in among white working class voters, it's expected that GOP wins the state. Now, it's not terribly unlikely. We saw Trump do it back in 2016. I'm just going to go up through the map like this because I kind of feel like it. We saw Trump do it back in 2016. Now, if we go back, once again, up through the map, I kind of just enjoy, like, going randomly through states to the map. But, there are a few changes on this map. So, first off, I believe, actually, Lancaster and Berks County were still, blue, or red in 2020. But Northampton County, Trump, Biden managed to flip, which is difficult, but he managed to do it. But, a lot of these counties, actually, I don't think there are a lot of flips. I think it was only Erie County and Northampton County that I know of. But I think that the Republicans would have to do very, very well in, this is rural Virginia, Pennsylvania, which is not insane. We could see it happen if the GOP, or if the Democrats run Kamala Harris, and the GOP run Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley. But if they run Donald Trump, they're screwed. They're not going to win. But if they were to run Haley or DeSantis, we could see this, and the Democrats were to run Kamala Harris, and Haley and or DeSantis were to do well enough in the suburbs, we could see, a red Pennsylvania. It's not insane, and that is why, or I guess how Pennsylvania could flip. Now, the final state, and this is going to come as a surprise, this is honestly probably the third least unlikely state to flip. It's the state of Texas. Texas is the third least unlikely state to flip, or I guess the third most likely, but it's not very likely. If we go look at 2020, Trump only won Texas by 5.6%. This is supposed to be the GOP's California. This is supposed to be a solid red Republican state. They're not supposed to be losing in Texas. They're not supposed to be coming anywhere close to losing. However, as you can see, Biden did very well in the state of Texas. Now, if we go look at Texas exit polls, I actually haven't looked at their exit polls when it comes to area type, so I'm interested in looking at that and seeing if it favors the Democrats or the Republicans. Oh, actually, yeah, okay, that's very interesting. This actually does kind of help prove my point. The Texas suburbs are still red by 16%. That's a lot. I just found this, and this is how I think actually convincing me more that it's more likely that this happens than I thought before. The suburbs are still very red, they're still 16% like conservative. And Trump was only able to win by 5%. Now, 5% is a fairly large margin of victory, but if the Democrats are able to speed up this suburban shift, we could see it happen. Another thing I want to go look at is race. Now, as you can see, white voters make up 60% of the electorate. 60%. They make up 41% of the population. Only 41%. They make up 19% more of the electorate than the population. So for Democrats to be able to win there, not only would they have to do raise minority turnout, but they would also have to do much better among Hispanic and Latino voters. And I've discussed this before. I don't know if I've done it just like talking or in one of my videos, but I have discussed that Trump did very, very well among Hispanic and Latino voters. I think that this was maybe one of the best years that we'll see for Hispanic and Latino voters for Trump, and that these voters are expected to return back to the Democratic Party come 2024 because, first off, we already know that Hispanic and Latino voters typically skew with the incumbent. That's a fact. We've seen it before. But these voters also, if the Democrats run a candidate that's not Joe Biden, because Joe Biden was a not great candidate for minority voters, if the Democrats run a candidate that's essentially not Joe Biden, not a bad candidate for minority voters, which most Democrats are strong candidates for minority voters. If we see that, and also, if Kamala Harris runs, she would also be the half incumbent, or I guess the incumbent vice president. So I guess it's a half incumbent, but which would favor her slightly in a group she's already expected to do better in, and Trump is not the candidate anymore, and he's not the incumbent. So I think, or unless he is the candidate, he's still not the incumbent. So I think that really does show that we could see this. Now, the Democrats, their work would have to be fast. They would have to do very well, but one thing I do want to go look at, it kind of proves my point. If they were to get a Stacey Abrams in Texas, it probably would. But if we go back to 2016, we go back over here. Trump won the state of Georgia by 5.1%. He won Texas by 5.6%. Very, very similar margins of victory. Yet Georgia managed to flip. The only difference is there was Stacey Abrams in Georgia. For the Democrats to be able to flip the state of Texas, they need a Stacey Abrams in Texas. It's highly unlikely that they get one. Now, the final state, I think that these are easily the two least likely states. I'm putting them together because I am going to make them a tie because they're so close. And they're also very unrealistic. I don't think that either of them are going to flip. I think that it's unrealistic and because of trends, but I'll explain how it could potentially happen. Those states are Georgia and or Arizona. Now, if we let's go look at Georgia first. Biden won it, yes, but he very narrowly won it. He won it by 0.33%. That's a very narrow margin of victory. 0.23%. That's a very, very narrow margin of victory. And if the GOP were to essentially, do better among white voters, which is already unlikely. They do very, very well among white voters. Obviously they do well among white voters, but across the South, white voters split with the GOP much more than the rest of the nation. Obviously, this is not really a surprise because Democrats would be losing here without the white vote. But in New Hampshire, where white voters make up 90% of the electorate or something, Democrats win the white vote. But in the South, they do awfully. Keeping the Republicans only at 69% is a fairly strong showing for Democrats. So if the Republicans were able to do even better among the white vote, get into the low 70s, and then do, I guess, better among some of these other groups, or raise white turnout so it already, I believe, is at a higher share of the electorate. But if they were to raise it even higher, so it's even higher share than the electorate, and then they were to run a moderate or a traditional Republican, if the GOP were to take a dramatic turn, and they were to run a moderate, more traditional Republican who can still do well in the suburbs, somebody more like Mitt Romney, they would be able to win in the state of Georgia. Probably by fairly large margins, probably by low lean margins. I think that the days of seeing Georgia being a likely state are over, though. We're still probably going to see the Democrats winning there. And in the state of Arizona, first off, the state's suburbs, I believe, are still red, which is obviously not a great sign for the GOP that they're losing there, even though the suburbs are red. But what they would have to do is they would have to be able to backtrack 8 years, because also from 2016 to 2020, 8 years of suburban swing. So they would have to backtrack those 8 years while they're still swinging, and then do better among Hispanic Latino voters, which is unlikely, as we already saw that Trump, as I was discussing earlier, did very well among Hispanic Latino voters, and we already seeing that the Democrats are expected to do better, although Trump Trump lost by 24%, so it was still a fairly strong showing. I think Biden did worse among Hispanic Latino voters than Clinton. I'm not sure because there were some areas where Biden did better or worse in random areas, which were surprising. I would assume that he did worse. I'm not 100% certain, so I'm not going to say that, and I don't have the 2016 exit polls up at the moment. But if the GOP were to do better among Hispanic Latino voters, we could see it happen. I don't think that it will. I don't necessarily think that Texas or Florida would happen. North Carolina could. Pennsylvania, maybe. Wisconsin and North Carolina, though, are probably easily the two most likely, and the two that only really have a seriously good chance of happening. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Stay tuned for my next video, and I will see you all there. Bye!